This show is about two people giving their opinions. They are not experts on the matter. They are just people who want to have a chat. If you have any questions about morality or any other issues, please talk to a priest.
Yes or no? The state should be allowed to implement the death penalty.
Boah, this is a good one. Now, so if you're talking about the basic overall morality of the death penalty or the church allowing it, that's unquestionable. It's in the Bible. It goes all the way back. It's mentioned many times. It's very, very clear that you can put someone to death for the proper reasons. To me, that's extremely clear. Now, where I am not so clear about it is when it comes down to the state, because we've seen it, especially in the last, 40, 50 years, maybe before that as well. I guess it could have been just not really, put down in the history books as much, but the state often makes bad decisions in terms of who they're putting to death. So do we actually trust the state, which can't do anything, right? The state can't build bridges. The state can't, run schools. Do we really trust the state to execute people based on, a judicial system that, look what the judicial system has done to Donald Trump, for goodness sake. I mean, that's just one instance. I know that's a tiny instance. And there are many, many people who have been found innocent even after having been executed. I shouldn't say many, many, but some for sure. And that, in my mind, makes it unclear if it should be allowed. I mean, maybe it's better that you say, no, our state is too stupid, too incompetent that they cannot morally or even rightly put someone to death. So I would say no.
Okay, I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to say yes because I just think when the church allows the death penalty, right? I don't think there's an asterisk there saying specifically when the church is involved in the decision, right? It allows the death penalty for any society, as long as it's done justly. And, to your point, like I see where you're coming from. As long as it's done justly. I'm not here to defend the state, but a society is a conglomeration of people, right? And those people elect, or sometimes don't, leaders. And those leaders sort of have the authority imbued in them, whether or not, it's a part of the church. They have that authority to do that type of thing, to make those type of decisions. And we can hope and pray that they're good leaders and make good decisions. Sometimes they're not, but still, I would say the state should have that ability. And you brought up an interesting point, like, if it were the church and the church was, involved in the government in all its glory, even then, right, there's not infallibility associated with that type of judgment. I mean, you look at St. Joan of Arc, right? She was effectively executed by the church improperly, right? And so I don't know. I see where you're making that distinction. To me, that distinction isn't the most important, and I would just fairly confidently say a yes for the death penalty just across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you'd have to ask then, I mean, should the church burn people because they're heretics? I mean, that's something the church has done in the past. I mean, that's something that I'm not going to judge the church's actions, but to me, at least on the surface of it, it's like, woo, that's pretty harsh. But I also think a lot of these things are misreported. They're misrepresented for what it actually was. It's like the Spanish Inquisition. It's like, oh, they killed billions of Jews. They were the most evil torturers, and it's like, actually not. I think they killed, I don't know the numbers, but it was much smaller than they report. And it was after many warnings. It was like, hey, look, we count you as traitors. Yep. You have to leave.
And it was the exception, not the rule. And the same thing when the church burned heretics. Like, they got a lot of press, especially once the Protestants started, yelling about that and screaming about that. But it was like you say, it was a relatively infrequent situation.
Right, exactly. And so again, if you're looking at a church tribunal, I know St. Thomas More, for instance, was someone who was in charge of some of these executions. Now, I would trust him to be just, and he's not just going to be like, hey, here's a dude off the street who, some people have said he did this, so we're just going to burn him. Obviously not. I mean, you would trust someone with that much goodness and wisdom that if he's going to put someone to death, then it's not just going to be willy nilly. Now, what about Kamala Harris? If I could be wrong, but I mean, I think she had almost that type of authority when she was in California, right? She's the attorney general. So I don't know what that has to do with the death penalty necessarily, but she's like your top prosecutor. So I think she's at least in that ballpark. So I mean, and if she's a senator, governor, these are people who actually have these types of decisions, in their hands, and she's a moron. I mean, no bones about it. And I think that she's obviously not the only one. It's not just because she's a woman. It's not because at all she's a woman. She's just dumb. I mean, there are plenty of dumb men out there who have the same position. So it's like, do you really want to trust these people to go and make decisions of life or death, or for goodness sake, even putting people in jail? I think it's a whole nother conversation. Should people be put in prison for smoking weed, for dealing weed? And this is a really good question. I mean, should people be put in prison for nonviolent acts, period? That's another yes or no. Maybe we should say that for another time.
Yeah,
I think it's a really good question.
And do I trust those people to make the right decisions if they were in the case to do a death penalty? No. But in general, like individuals aside, do I think the state should have the right, regardless of, who is in those positions? Yeah. I guess that's where I'm coming from, right? I see your point. I totally agree. Do I want Kamala Harris to be able to, give the death penalty to someone that, doesn't like pride? No. But do I want the United States to have the ability to carry out capital punishment when it's deserved? Yes. Right. And so you can't pick and choose. You can't say, well, I want the death penalty when Trump's president, but not when Kamala's president. I guess that's where I'm coming from.
And I hear you there. And it would be an impossibility to try to change it with each just or unjust ruler. So that's why you do have a rule of law, I suppose, at least here. I mean, that's not always the case. I mean, it used to be the monarchs did actually change the law pretty much as they came. And, now we really do have a republic that is based on laws, which I think is a good thing, because it does kind of keep you, you have to be pretty well balanced within this, the rule of law, which is
that's a huge point, right? Like whether or not to carry out capital punishment is not something the executive branch has the power over in our system, right?
Right.
That has to come from the judiciary. So
yeah. So another yes or no, Dad, you can change this into two if you want. So yes or no, we should bring back the stocks. We should put people in the stocks. We should publicly whip people. We should, cut off the finger of thieves. And it sounds like a crazy question, but what do you think? Yes or no?
It's tough. I don't know about that one. Let me talk through it and then decide if it come to a yes or a no. But does that work? Absolutely, right? Like we have in the Old West, you have the public hangings and stuff. That saved probably a lot of people from going into a life of crime because they got scared and were like, no, I'm not doing that. So there's certainly benefits to it. It's also very inhumane and kind of gross, and maybe I just have soft sensibilities because I'm, we're both children of the modern times. But yeah,
but I think hanging is the extreme though. So I mean, let's say public embarrassment
and chopping off fingers is pretty extreme too.
Okay,
that's permanent
extreme,
damage.
That's extreme.
Let's say something that's not permanent damage, stocks or maybe whipping. I don't know. I think I would lean no. I feel like you're leaning yes.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I don't lean yes. I am now, as you said, in terms of hanging people or cutting off fingers, I would lean probably also no. Hanging, no, I think that's grotesque. And I think that leads to a lot of weirdness. I mean, come on, having children being able to see a public hanging is a very strange and macabre and gross thing. But
you're okay with the children seeing stocks or whipping?
Maybe. I mean, that's a tough question too. I mean, I think that is where it gets pretty iffy. The children are going to see it, but it would, if you were a 10-year-old and you go and see a guy in the stocks who's, really suffering, and you're like, hey, mama, daddy, why, why is this happening? He's like, well, because he did this, this, and this. I mean, that is actually going to teach you a lesson. And I do think that, again, I think so many people these days are able to get away with anything, especially saying things, especially, calumny or whatever. And they can just say whatever they want because there's just no comeuppance. It just doesn't matter. You can say whatever you want. I mean, if you can calumniate a Catholic priest, even as a Catholic, and it's like, oh, whoops, My bad. I saw a guy on Twitter this was a while ago who said he wanted to punch a priest in the face. And I'm like, bro, you can't say things like that. I mean, I think you just think because you're behind a keyboard that you can say, I mean, these types of things, I actually very firmly believe that people like that should be whipped. I mean, like actually put it in public, put it in a square and beaten. And I know I know not a lot of people agree with me, but I think that if that, and look at it from the other way too. So that's one extreme, but also look at it. If you get caught selling weed, Eric, I know that it's been in your past a little bit.
I'm all about the weed.
And look at that shirt. That's a weed dealer shirt if I've ever seen one. And so, let's say you get caught selling weed, and it's like, okay, right now, especially say California or something, or used to be at least, you'd be sent to prison for what, 2 years, 10 years, some insane. Now, what if instead of that, instead of being put into this prison where you're gone and locked up for 10 years and you're locked up with a bunch of gangsters who probably murdered people, what if instead of that, you're locked in the stocks for I don't know, 2 days, or you're whipped or something, or it's embarrassing, it hurts, but it's momentary. And you learn your lesson. You're like, hey, shoot, I'm not going to, it's like kind of like a little kid. I just got spanked. I'm not going to do that again.
In some ways it's more humane than 10 years of prison
I'd say 100% more humane. I'd say totally more. And I think we don't think that way because we think, oh, that's brutal. But it's like, do you think it's okay to send them to prison and again, I'm not saying weed's good, for goodness sake, but now it's legal in half the country. How insane are we that we're blocking people up for selling weed? Now it's legal. It's nuts. Yeah.
No, it's crazy. Yeah. I don't know. If I were king for a day, if you were my advisor, I'd have to take that into consideration, but I'd probably lean to no for the whipping. Maybe the stocks. I think you have me convinced.
If I was your advisor, how long do you think it would be before I overthrew you? That's the real question. Well, everyone, we hope you appreciated the little bit of a bonus there, maybe 2 yes or no's. Let us know what you guys think in the comment section. Do you think the state should be allowed to put people to the death, to put people to death? What do you think? Should the church be allowed to do it? What do you think about public humiliation or punishment? All very interesting questions. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and stay tuned for more yes or no with Kevin and Kate.